Morning, mate.
How are you?
I'm Enrico, CEO of MarketOne, and I'm joined here by Kerry, Cunningham.
Kerry Cunningham, head of research and thought leadership at 6sense, and it's fun to be able to do one of these things in the same room.
Thanks for traveling so far.
My pleasure.
8-hour time zones from Palm Springs, so
right.
Really good to have you.
Yeah,
and a great show yesterday as well. Thanks for
fun.
having us at the Rev Talks.
Yeah.
And we're going to do it again today.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about the B2B buyer experience and our study that we did.
Mm-hmm.
And then talk a bit about how we can take some of that learnings and apply them into some go-to-market tactics. So why don't I head it off to you, and I'll come back in just a few minutes.
Yeah, that's great. So I'm going to walk through the research. I'll talk about numbers globally, but also UKI-specific numbers. And then when I'm done, you'll talk about what to do about it. Yeah. So this is data from our 2025 buyer experience study. This is a third year doing the study. What the research has been telling me is that we have to think about things a little bit differently. And one of those things is something that we've kind of taken for granted as something that in B2B we ought to be doing, which is aligning marketing and sales, right? And this is all we've talked about for 20 years. Problem was that's not really what we should have been doing exactly. Because we've been focused on internal alignment, marketing has become viewed really as just a vending machine for MQLs.
The hamster wheel.
The hamster wheel, right? And really with no other value. And that's led to tons and tons of what I think of as just empty cycles of process improvement that really don't end up in any lasting improvement. That's led to cynical, checked out sellers. I think we all know that. Even worse though, our buyers are super skeptical and very, very defensive. They don't take our calls or emails, and they haven't for a very long time. And that's because we look at buyers as these just cardboard caricatures of people. They're not real human beings. What they are is just conversion fodder. They're things that we're trying to convert. How do we get them to convert is the only way we think about them. And I don't know about you, but I don't think I like to be thought of as
doesn't provide a very good experience.
Yeah. So the question is, how do we get off this ride? And we'll talk about that. And I think a lot of what you have to say is going to be, really designed to answer that question. But the big picture is we need to align to our buyers first and how buyers buy and what buyers need from us. And if we do that, then marketing and sales, if we're both aligned to that, we'll be aligned enough to each other, and then we'll have some things to work out still. But that's really where we need to go. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the methods. We put the methods in all of the reports. We want everybody to look at the methods and what we're doing and how we're doing it. And one, we're proud of it, and two, you ought to know. But we're not going to talk about it now because we have too many other things that we do want to talk about. Starting with this. So this is our view of the buying journey at 6sense, these buying journey stages. The names of them don't really matter, and we don't want to get hung up on them. Just the understanding that there's a bunch of organizations that aren't in market, and then there's early, middle,
and that's the majority, right?
Right. As we're going to see, that is the majority. So we did a research project earlier in the year where we looked across a lot of our customers. We have thousands of customers. We looked across our customers and 19 million accounts that we're monitoring on behalf of our customers. So we monitor the activity from those accounts, and we use AI to make predictions about where those accounts are in their buying journey. That's really at the core of what 6sense does. And so here's what we found, that 60% of accounts that you might like to be selling to are just not in market at any given point in time. Another 34% are in these first two stages. We call it awareness and consideration, but these are stages relatively early in a buying journey in the first 3 to 6 months or so. And then just 6% are down in these two stages that are really close to the end of the buying journey where they're actually going to be doing deals. So an overwhelming number of your buyers are not right on the cusp of buying at any given point in time. Across the top of the screen, the buying cycle we saw globally this year is 10 months on average. That's the buying cycle, not the sales cycle. We'll talk about the difference in a minute. UKI, it's actually 8. So a shorter buying cycle, even controlling for other factors, they were compressed in UKI. All right, so first most important thing, and you mentioned it, 60% of the accounts you might like to sell to, even if they're your best target accounts, are just not in market now. And if the buying cycle is 10 months long globally, 8 months in the UKI, you are a long way. Even if you convince one of those accounts to go out and market to buy your stuff, they don't do it overnight. It's going to take a long time. You can't build a revenue plan on convincing accounts to go into market today and buy your stuff for this quarter. It just doesn't work that way. But, and this is the place where it gets really tricky. When buyers go into market, day one of that journey, they put 4 of the 5 vendors they're going to evaluate on the short list on day one, and they buy from one of those vendors that they put on the day one short list almost every time, approximately every time. The way that they're able to do that is buyers are actually really, really experienced in most of the categories that they're buying in. Most buyers are not buying in a brand new category. If I'm an accounting VP of accounting for my company, I've bought accounting platforms an average of 8 times in my career. And so I know the categories very well.
Well-educated buyers.
Yeah. And everybody in that buying group is really in that same boat. So they know which vendors they want to evaluate. They put them on the short list on day one. All right. So I'll explain one thing here. So in our research, we asked buyers, at what point in your buying journey did you have your first contact with sellers? Now, we call that the point of first contact, for reasons that are kind of obvious. And so buyers tell us that the point of first contact was, for the last couple of years, at 69% of the way through the buying journey. And we got a little ahead of ourselves and called that the point of first contact constant, because it seemed like it really was. What we found this year, however, was that that point of contact had moved backward in time to 61% through the buying journey. And that's a pretty significant change in 1 year. So the question for us, of course, was what had happened? What was going on there? And so that's the global number. UKI, it's actually down to 57%, so even compressed even more. One thing to notice, the sales cycle begins when that first contact happens. And so what this is really telling us is that the sales cycle begins now about 60%.
So sales is not at all involved until this point of first contact.
That first 60% of the buying process, sales is not involved.
In the dark.
Buyers are not talking to them at all. Yeah, absolutely. All right, but here's what happens in that 60%, the part where we're not engaged with sellers. So buyers set their short list on day one. We just talked about that. 4 out of the 5 vendors on the top of that short list are on that short list. They also, during this period of time, establish their requirements. So buyers tell us 85% of the time, they either completely or partially or mostly rather establish their requirements. That number is roughly equivalent in UK, Ireland as it is globally. So they're going very far along the path and deciding what they want. Not only that, but we specifically asked buyers, did you put your short list in order of preference before you talk to sellers? Very direct question. The answer was yes, 94% of the time. So again, approximately everybody is ordering their short list according to preference.
Before speaking to a seller.
Yeah. And so this whole part of the buying process, the whole beginning part of the buying process is really about that buying group debating within themselves which vendors they like best and coming to consensus about which vendor that's going to be. When they get to the point where they finally come to consensus, that's the trigger to initiate contact. That's what tells them we're safe now to go get pitches, to go hear pitches. Now we know what we want. Now it's okay, we can go hear pitches and we won't be overly swayed by one thing or another. And so buyers tell us that about close to 80% of the time, a little over 80% in the UK, a little less globally, buyers are the ones who say that we initiate contact. And we also ask, are you getting phone calls and emails from sellers before you initiate contact? The answer is yes, almost all the time. So they're getting calls and emails. They just set them aside, right? Mm-hmm. Until they get to the point
until they're ready.
Until they're ready. And ready means we put our short list in order. Now we're ready to go talk to vendors. So now during this the sales cycle, what's happening? Well, they're mostly validating the choice that they've already made. So the preliminary winner, the one who's at the top of the short list before they talk to sellers, wins the deal globally 77% of the time, just 67% in the UKI. So it's substantially less. We don't yet know why, but UKI buyers are more open-minded going into that sales process. But what I would say is I would get a little less hung up on the 10-point difference and focus a little more on the fact that you do not want to be in second place at the time of the start of the sales cycle. So given what we know about this, we've named these kind of two big phases of the buying process. The first part is the selection phase, and that happens before buyers talk to sellers. They select the vendors that they think are the best, and they put the one they like best on top. The second part, what we think of as what we know as the sales cycle, is the validation phase of the buying process. They're mostly testing their assumption or their decision about which vendor they like at this point. Now, in globally, 23% of the time, in the UKI, 33% of the time, their choice changes. And I think that's largely a situation where number one and number two were very close going into this validation phase, and it flipped. So that, you know, the vendor who was not number one ended up winning the deal. That's 23 or 33%, depending upon where you are. It's not nothing. It's a significant difference. But again, you don't want to be
first party advantage.
Yeah, massive advantage of being in that position. One of the interesting thing is buyers in B2B are very much like we would be in our normal lives. When they have a favorite entering the sales process, they want to talk to that favorite first. Think of how you go shopping for a car. You know, you might want to buy the Beamer, but you also like the whatever it might be, the Mercedes.
Good German manufacturers.
Yeah,
we are in Europe.
If your first choice is the Beamer, you go to the Beamer dealership first. You don't go to see the Mercedes first, right? And you hope you don't have to go see the Mercedes. No offense to the Mercedes buyers out there. All right, so what we thought when we first saw this data was that, well, certainly all of this change and the shift in the point of first contact is got to be because of AI, right? That's the big thing that's changed. Buyers are using AI. And so we asked those questions, and indeed, buyers are using LLMs. 94% of buyers said that they used AI in their buying process. However, when we looked deeper into it and looked at whether AI would have been causing them to engage earlier, it became clear that that can't be the case. So buyers who used LLMs, that's 94%. So not surprisingly, that's the global average, that they're engaging at 61%. But if they didn't use LLMs, they actually engaged substantially earlier, not later. Right? So if it had been later, we would be saying, okay, yes, LLMs are causing them to engage earlier. But those who didn't use LLMs actually engaged earlier. So LLMs can't be what's causing buyers to engage earlier. Now, not only that, but we asked more questions about this. So when are you using LLMs? And buyers are more likely to be using LLMs toward the middle of their buying journey than they are at the beginning. And here, it's really, I'll bring in another set of findings that we have from this year and last year's study, and that is what I mentioned a minute ago. Our buyers are extremely experienced in most categories. They've evaluated between 5 and 10 times. In whatever category you're talking about now, they've done it before. They've been there. So we tend to think of buyers as they go into market to buy something, and they spend a couple of months doing general research and all of that. That actually is very far from the truth. So if I'm the head of accounting and I'm going into market to evaluate accounting firms, I know the accounting vendors. I know the accounting platforms already. I don't need Google and I don't need ChatGPT to find out which accounting platforms I should be evaluating. I might be going to look to see, well, we know 4 of them. Is there another one out there, an up-and-comer? And that's the 5th one we put on the list.
Right. But
that's not what we're doing. What we're mostly using LLMs for is, again, the same way we use them in our normal lives. All right, so there's 5 things we're looking at. We know what we want to do, but I'd like to get a table where you just kind of compare those things. So ChatGPT, can you put together a table that lists out these things? Not only that, but if you're somebody who is an expert in these topics, so you're buying something in a category, you're an expert in that category, you're going to be spending a substantial amount of time getting the LLM, ChatGPT, Claude, or whatever, to put the right information into that table you asked for, right?
Your scorecard, basically.
Right. You're telling it what to do more often than it's telling you what's true, right? In categories where you know things. If what you're doing is you're asking ChatGPT for answers about complex things in categories where you don't know anything, if you're taking that information and just trusting it, you should not do that, right? I think we know that about LLMs right now, right? They make things up, they leave things out. And so buyers are not yet anywhere near the point where they just trust what's coming out and they're using that. Now, the other thing that we know is that buyers have told us that their behavior has not really changed. So you see here 3 years of how many, so the question here is how many interactions did you have as an individual with each vendor you evaluated? That number is 1 less than last year, same number as 2 years ago.
Pretty consistent.
Yeah, they're still going to vendor, you're still using vendor content as much as they have over the past years. And they're using external resources. So third-party consultants, analysts, resources such as those, just as much as they have and even more actually this year. So their buying behavior.
So not replacing them with LLMs.
Yeah, no. And so their buying behavior when they're in market right now has not materially changed. And when we look at what buyers are doing with LLMs, it's what we talked about a little bit ago. They're using them to put together summaries, comparisons. They're using them in all of the ways that we normally would think of using an LLM right now, which is not tell me what's true about a thing that I know. It's summarize things that I can fact check and I can look at. And very little actual kind of new information creation so far. So it may come in a couple of years, but it's not here yet. So all of that to say, we don't yet know in our presentation why buyers are engaging earlier. So we came up with a couple of hypotheses, and we asked the question, like, what are the things that are impacting everybody? And global economic uncertainty. I apologize on behalf of some of the people who may be causing that. Yeah. And then AI inside of virtually everything that anybody's ever going to buy right now. Those things are happening everywhere. And so we went out, we did another survey, and we tested our hypotheses. And we asked a question, did economic uncertainty impact the length of your buying cycle? And here the answer was overwhelmingly that it did, but it was kind of split a little bit. So there were a lot of buyers who said it made the buying process longer, but there were substantially more buyers who said it shortened the buying cycle. So the way to think about this is, if I've got budget at the beginning of the year, I'm under pressure to get things done. One of the ways I want to get things done is I want to buy this platform that's going to help me in my function, right? And it's probably going to have AI inside, and that's really why I think it's going to be really useful for me. And I want to get that thing in here as fast as I can. 1, so I can get the productivity, and 2, so I can get that money spent before the budget gets taken away.
Because you probably won't get it back.
You're not going to get it back. So buyers are shortening their cycle time. We also asked, did you engage with, did economic uncertainty change the timing of your interaction with sales? And we asked it in that neutral way. And this number was overwhelming, right? So a net of 40% of buyers said they actually engaged with sellers earlier because of economic uncertainty. Now that one would be a bit of a head scratcher if it were not for the other hypothesis that we have, which is AI's inside things. So the second thing that we asked about was, did you want or expect AI to be inside of what you're buying, right? And you can see from the numbers on the screen, I won't go through them all individually, but overwhelmingly buyers wanted or expected, and the AI features wanted. 62% said they were either mandated to have AI inside what they were buying or strongly encouraged, right? So it's a big thing, right? And then ultimately 89% of what our respondents bought had some sort of AI capabilities inside. So very clearly AI was on their mind as they're going into market to buy something. So did the need to evaluate AI inside change the timing of your interaction with sales? Here an even more overwhelming number, 44% said yes, or a net of 44%, yes, we engaged earlier because we wanted to evaluate AI. So if we bring these things together, these things actually do really work together. So we've got economic uncertainty that's putting pressure on everybody to perform. We have solutions that we want to buy that we think are going to help us perform well, and achieve our goals. Those solutions almost certainly have AI capabilities built into them now. And we want to get those AI capabilities into our companies so that we can achieve our goals. But even though I'm very experienced in evaluating solutions in this category, I've never evaluated, say, the accounting solutions when they had Gen AI built into them.
Right.
And I don't, so I've got concerns about.
It's a new feature, basically.
It's brand new.
Yeah.
So I've got concerns about how they build their models, data security. Where's all this data going? Where's it coming from? How's that going to work? The biggest question I have is, what does it actually do? So you've got AI in it. What are the capabilities?
And presumably vendor websites aren't being updated with this information.
Yeah, so we also did a look through ChatGPT and had it analyze a whole bunch of B2B websites, and ChatGPT was not impressed with how they were describing that. So these factors are working together to cause buyers to engage earlier because they think it may take a long time to evaluate this AI that's built into stuff, and they're in a hurry to get this stuff in-house. They want to get this purchase done before the budget evaporates so that they have time to get the productivity out of it, so they're engaging earlier. What they're ultimately finding, though, is it's not really taking longer, and that's why it's compressing the cycles. The cycles are actually shorter as a result of that. All right, so last thing I'm going to share here. All of this together tells us that there's about a third of your ICP, that middle 17 plus 17%, where we know that those buyers are in market and they're persuadable, right? They haven't yet set their preferences. This is where we want to concentrate our resources and make sure that we're putting our best foot forward to help those buyers develop a preference for our brands. By the time buyers engage, they will have developed a preference already. And as I was saying a minute ago, they're going to talk to the vendors on the top of that preference list first, almost every time. So if you're a seller and a buyer says, hey, I'd like to get a demo, you should ask them, were we the first vendor that you contacted? The answer to that question is the answer to whether you're first or not.
It's revealing, right?
Yeah, and that is not a particularly threatening question. Right? Buyers would probably tell you yes or no, right? And so that'll tell you whether you're in the driver's seat or not. And then third, it's really important to understand if buyers are going to put 4 of the 5 vendors they're going to evaluate on the short list right away, we need to be marketing effectively to buyers when they're not yet in market. And that's a 5-letter word that B2B marketers don't like, brand. So that's something that we really need to be paying a lot more attention to. So that's kind of the data from this study.
Okay.
And now we'd like to talk about what.
Well, let's pivot now to perhaps how do we take that information and I'm going to just see if I can share my screen in just a second. But take a look at the studies and implications of this for go-to-market teams. Basically, how do we think about we've been kind of sifting through the data and kind of thinking about what this all means. And as I was talking, as a go-to-market professional, working with lots of clients and kind of thinking, I'm pretty clever. I know this stuff. It was an overwhelming sense of loss of agency, is what I felt. When we went through this, and more specific, it's like, okay, we've lost control of the sales process, right? And so you've shared with us lots of great data, in particular the one which says that buyers aren't contacting us until 57% of the way through the journey. Yeah. Right. So there's a huge, almost 2/3 of that buyer's journey is effectively blind, right, invisible to us. And it's not just that; it's also when accounts are, when they're starting to research, trying to form buying groups, and when they're doing that competitive research. All these things are happening without us really knowing.
Important decisions are being made.
100%, right?
I don't even know that it's happening.
And that's, I guess that's what 6sense refers to as the dark funnel,
Right.
So all of this is pretty, it's pretty sobering, maybe, is a better word. But what if, let's think about what if we could, is there a different way? Is there a different way to go about this? Could we win back that agency, right? So if we go back to that dark funnel analogy, imagine if we could have visibility into those first 60% of the buyer's journey when they're starting to make that first putting together the shortlist, the day one shortlist, as you referred to it. And better yet, if while those buying groups are starting to form, if we could actually pull back the veil and really understand who is in the buying committee, right? And what are they looking at? What are they engaging with? And at the account level, when are accounts actually moving and transitioning to those through those phases? So really making, I guess, this visibility that I'm referring to brings back agency, right? Mm-hmm. And visibility, the way to get visibility is through signals, right? So there is a name for kind of this shift that we're talking about, and we refer to this as signal-led ABX. Obviously, MarketOne, we've been partnering now with 6sense for a while, and it's the proof points are there. Yeah, we can really we can light that dark funnel, and with that visibility comes power, comes agency. So what does signal-led ABX look like? Well, first of all, we're going to flip the script. You talked about marketing to a lead and generating the MQL, that hamster wheel that we're talking about. We want to flip that and really make it account centric. And looking at across the account, building that mosaic of who are the members of the buying group. We want it to be, of course, signal led, right? So which means when we're building programs, instead of them being a drip program, send this message, wait a week, send another message, wait another week. These are all more trigger based, behavioral based programs that are, you're reacting to the signals, whether those are account signals or individual kind of buying group signals. And then we want to be able to integrate this approach of this kind of signal first intelligent framework, bringing that into both our inbound and outbound motions. And of course, when you think about signals and just the vast quantity of these signals, you need to bring AI into the equation, right? And so we want to make sure that we can orchestrate kind of AI-enabled engagement programs with humans. Though this is B2B. Ultimately, people buy from people.
It is, right? But I think your point there is really important. There are, we process 1 trillion signals a day. So you're not going to reach into that bucket of signals and go, you know what, I think it's this one. Right. That has to be AI.
Exactly. And so let's talk about what when we talk about signals. And I like this shift that I think it's come in about the last year or so, that we've pivoted away from just talking about intent. Yeah. I think intent, a lot of people, B2B intent, that was kind of brought to us by Bombora a long time ago, right? Yeah. But what we're really talking about here is not just that kind of opaque black box intent signal. And that's what we refer to here as the third-party signals. These are kind of the breadcrumbs the cookie crumbs, right, that people leave across the web sphere. But we want to bring into that, of course, we want to look at those signals, but we want to add to those signals not more transparent signals as well, as we refer to as second-party signals. These are press releases. These could be, on Crunchbase funding rounds. So open up a new office, leadership changes, new products, coming out. All of these could trigger a reason why a vendor, or a buying unit, a buying committee might form. And of course, there's first-party signals. And it's not just, I think knee-jerk reactions when people certainly go to market, think about first-party signals. They're thinking, web traffic, conversions of the web traffic, maybe email programs. What are my email cadence or sales cadences doing? But it goes beyond that. It goes into if you're a PLG company, you want to understand, how's the app being used, right? Yeah. If you are a manufacturer, how are my machines performing, right? And so that telemetric data could actually trigger a go-to-market, could trigger a potential reason why you might want to reach out to that company. Again, this forms part of the trillion number of signals that you refer to. And the only way to really sift through that is through some, pretty fancy algorithms, which again, I think 6sense has done a phenomenal job. You guys call it 6AI. And using the 6QA, right, this 6sense qualified accounts as a way to then really understand and drive next best action and orchestrate that next best action.
I think of that as good old-fashioned AI at this point, because that AI that's used to look at big data and identify patterns, that's not brand new. It's been around for a while, and the good news there is it's really mature. It works.
It is. And when you can all of a sudden use that AI engine to, if we go back to this slide, and which is the dark funnel, all of a sudden, with this level of capability, you can light that funnel, so you can start seeing what accounts are doing, buying groups forming,
see what matters and what
matters and what doesn't. Exactly. Super, super powerful, right, for go-to-market teams. And so a lot on this one, but this comes back to a point you made, which is, it's the mosaic, it's building that mosaic, right, of those signals, not just one signal. If you imagine you're going after enterprise, which a lot of our clients are doing.
Yeah.
If you've got an MQL at a company that has 10,000 employees, one lead, surgeon doesn't really mean
anything,
right?
Yeah.
So you need to make sure that you're seeing a lot of more activity at that account level.
Yeah.
And so you're spending your budgets wisely, because it's limited budgets that we have. So the point of this slide is really more about how do you activate those 6 QAs, and where do you spend those resources, and what can you expect from them, an output, right? So we kind of show that obviously the more the signals, the more likelihood to convert to some form of an opportunity and revenue for you as a vendor.
I like that idea of mosaic also.
Yeah, building that mosaic. Yeah. And but there also could be reasons why you might want to go down into some of these more strategic accounts that perhaps aren't quite showing a huge amount of signals today, but these are strategic accounts, just key accounts, where you want to build that preference. You want to start understanding what are the install vendors and level of satisfaction with vendors. So you might start profiling them, and I think this is where go-to-market teams need to start thinking. And this came up in the breakfast seminar we did yesterday, rethinking the definition of BDR teams and SDR teams, and what the output is of those teams, right? Yeah. Whether are they going in for booking that meeting? Okay, well then let's make sure they're armed with the right accounts, right? The right 6 QA accounts. Yep. Or are they really trying to build that mosaic, further, not just through the signals, but also through holding interviews and understanding more about the install vendors, profiling the account, getting that sales intelligence at the account level. Then the BDR team shouldn't be targeted with booking meetings, but should be more targeted about, hey, help us build the mosaic.
Yeah, they're building long-term relationships. They're helping develop preference inside those accounts. And what all of the data says, and I think anybody's personal experience, if you just stop and think about it for a few minutes, is that's not going to result in a meeting right now.
It's not.
And that's okay.
Or if it does, it's not going to convert to pipeline revenue.
Yeah.
It's just going to waste sales' time.
But you got to do it.
Yeah.
You've got to be there.
So
be present to win eventually.
We spoke a lot about AI, but this is really just to really hit it home that it's particularly on 6sense has invested quite a lot in not just the algorithm, but then even the workflows, the agentic workflows that actually help go-to-market teams get these motions into play, so to speak. And again, I just want to stress it is the combination of AI working together with human team, right? The human side of it. Yeah. Whether it's at an event, whether it's at a demo meeting, building that relationship, because ultimately B2B sales, it's not going to be done and closed with a bot. It's going to be closed, through relationship with us, where we can build that trust. Mm-hmm. Right. So I do want to now pivot to what does this look like from an inbound and outbound motion. And so here we have perhaps not a traditional inbound motion, but looking at using kind of the 6sense that we talked a lot about, the 6AI and the scoring algorithms, the propensity modeling, and really using that capability of 6sense to understand which accounts are transitioning from target to awareness and to consideration, for instance, where we want to go into that middle, kind of that 34% of accounts. Those are the ones that you want to actively start, getting into a potential inbound motion like this. So push them into a display program, Of course, get those, try to get those into a motion onto a content hub. But go beyond just capturing, because a lot of clients are still focused on, okay, get them to the content hub and they'll submit a form, they'll download something.
Convert.
And now we're back into a lead-centric mindset, which is wrong.
Yeah.
Continue thinking about at the full account level. What portion of the buying group is coming to that microsite, engaging with your content? Do you have a chatbot? Back to LLMs. I mean, chatbots today, AI SDRs, now they're called, are super clever. Your Revy, you guys have one, we have one as well. And they can be very, very helpful, right? As an initial point of contact for a buyer. But then pushing that into more of a sales motion, right? And helping book those meetings and getting them into, if and when they're ready for that point of first contact, have them set up and book that meeting. So the point of this inbound, this inbound motion here is really to focus more on sales outcomes rather than just those marketing vanity metrics, form submits, and generating the MQL.
Yeah, and what our research going back a couple of years is just really, really clear that you cannot make a buyer convert when they don't want to.
Right.
And there's no cute
you can't
trick.
Force them to buy.
There's no cute trick that you're going to run that's going to cause them to engage with you if they don't want to, and when they're not ready. And to the extent that we continue to try to do that, we're just alienating.
Right. Now, so this is the inbound motion. Now let's take a look at the outbound motion, which is perhaps a bit more complex. There could be more moving parts in outbound depending on what tactics are being chosen. But the feeders are still the same. You're still looking at the signals. You're segmenting your accounts based on what the signals are telling you, and then getting them into a outbound motion, which might have a display, right? You could still have a kind of a digital air cover aspect to it, but then you also might put them into. This is where you could put them into a BDR, SDR sequence, and you're reaching out for the right reasons, right? It could be to be helpful, as I mentioned before. You want to maybe profile that account a bit more because it's a strategic account, and you want to understand who they're using, and maybe get in early and help influence that RFP and help write that RFP, frankly. Or it might be later in the process. Right.
And again, I mean, I'm sort of overemphasizing this perhaps, but even during that process where your BDR or your AE is going into that account and mapping it and understanding who the players are and delivering content, you have to do that whether you're getting response or not.
Right.
The response is not what you need to be trying to get right then. What you want to be doing is influencing that buying group and making them think that you're
building that preference.
Awesome partner to work with because you get all of this great stuff. Right?
Yeah.
They'll get in touch when they're ready.
And we talk about the right context here. It's so critical to make also these outbound sequence. One of the things that you certainly don't want to be doing, and a lot of what MarketOne does is really think about the psychology of that contact. Like, what are you going to say when you're going to call up to the person? And what you don't want to say, for instance, oh, I see that you're searching on certain keywords, right? That's a bit creepy, right? Yeah. So how you approach these cadences, the messages you send out, the content you're sharing, right? Again, back to being helpful, is going to help build that preference, so that if and when that account moves into a more formal buying process, you're top of mind. Right. So let's put this all into action, right? So if we think back to the three phases that we've talked about, right? There's that pre-intent phase. Most accounts are in pre-intent, right? They're not going to be in market necessarily. I've already thrown out some examples of what we want to do here. This is the preference builder play. This is where you want to be helpful, where whatever tactics you are doing, if you're inviting people to events, or if you're reaching out, it's more about your profiling. You're trying to understand the account. The point here is not necessarily to get them. It's not a pipeline acceleration program, right? Because the account is likely not in market, right? But it's so critical to understand, certainly for top accounts, right? And that depends on. I mean, again, we talked about this. So where does this really work well? It probably comes down to, well, what's your average deal size? I would say if you're selling a deal that's probably $100,000 or more, you could probably invest in profiling that account because the customer acquisition cost actually supports that level of investment. But if you're just doing a small transactional sale, 5K, 10K, maybe not.
Yeah, exactly right.
So this is the preference builder phase during the pre-intent. Then we go to the this is the first 60% of the buyer's journey, right? This is where the committees are starting to form, doing their own. This is all the self-directed kind of dark funnel, I guess, phase, if we call it, right?
And I love the name you have, so the consensus.
The consensus builder.
Because that's what they're doing. That's the whole job of that buying group there, is to come to consensus, and it's hard, right? To get 10.
So you want to be helpful as a
Yeah.
brand. If you can all of a sudden like the dark funnel, you know that they're forming. You have a sense of what, perhaps what competitors are there. Imagine starting to feed. You're starting to feed specific content, right? It could be through, again, programmatic media. It could be through sales cadences, where you're just trying to be helpful. Hey, here's some stuff, and they might at one point say, actually, this is a good time. Let's talk, right? So often what happens in the consensus builder play is that you actually are able to book quite a number, lots of meetings for sales, because they are moving towards that point of first contact.
They get there, right?
Exactly. So that's the consensus builder. And then the final on the validation phase, this is all about closing, right? And if you're not the top dog, you want to be the top dog, right? So this is about flawless execution, and so has probably a number of mixed tactics that go into it. Executive level outreach and support into the deal cycle. It could be peer-to-peer meetings. It could be some roundtables that you invite them to, case studies and whatnot. One thing that I want to pull out here, which we haven't talked about yet, is kind of insights in the deal cycle when maybe you know the incumbent, you're not the incumbent, or what other competitors are in the mix. Right. The nice thing about lighting the dark funnel is that you actually have a lot of insights in probably who is the competition.
Yeah.
And you can use that in your outbound motions. Again, when you're speaking, whether it's arming the AEs and the sell team, the pitch team with that information, and really kind of depositioning the if you will, the competition.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. One of the a little context also is that if they're evaluating 5 vendors on average, you have a 20% chance of being the top vendor. And if you're not the top vendor going into this stage, though, your likelihood of winning the deal goes down to 23% divided by 4.
Right.
So,
and that's the funnel. That's the sales funnel, right?
That's the way that goes.
We know that.
But what's really another thing that's really fascinating here is, while the decision only changes during the validation phase 23% of the time, buyer preference changes a lot more than that.
Right.
So what we asked buyers was, did your preference for vendor change during the sales cycle? The answer was yes, 42% of the time. But did you change your decision, your preliminary choice? 23% of the time.
Huh.
So it's really hard to get 10 people to agree to anything. And once you do that,
even though you might want something different,
you don't relitigate the whole decision process. You go with it. And so you're, as a seller, as a sales team, you have to do a great job all the time, even if you know that you're not going to win the deal. There is still a lot at stake in that process. So you can't take the day off.
Well, and I think good sales teams know that, right?
Yeah.
And that's why you need to. It's in the end, it's a bit of a volume. It's a volume game as well. But so that's the deal closer play, and why do this, right? And this is back to evidence, right? ROI numbers the stats are mind blowing. I mean, when you flip the script, so to speak, move away from just that MQL lead based, lead centric model and you kind of just rewire to being more account based, you're going to have much more success in getting the right deals into pipeline that convert. That means the velocity changes. You can hit your sales numbers probably much sooner, and ultimately the sales and marketing alignment that we've talked about before. Sales might have less booked meetings, but they're going to be better book meetings.
Yeah, and I think when I look at these numbers, if somebody asks me, well, why is that working, this thing you just described? Because now you are actually aligned to the buyer, the way that they buy. If you're not aligned to the buyer, you're trying to get them to convert all throughout their the early part of their buying journey when they don't want to. And we all know from our experience how annoying that is, right? And it causes you to be defensive.
Yeah.
And so if you're,
and it builds a bad brand experience.
it's terrible, right? Yeah. I'm spending months trying to avoid you.
Yeah.
You know, and that's while I'm evaluating you. So you don't want to be somebody as a brand that is being avoided while they're evaluating.
Exactly.
You want to be a brand that is actually being useful and help you, where your buyer is saying, huh, that's interesting, I'll look at that. Or at worst saying, okay, they're not annoying.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
They're available,
but it's helpful.
they're not annoying.
It's being helpful. And I think that comes back to, because we know there's a lot of BDR teams, SDR teams that are out there that they're still kind of measured on book meetings.
Yeah.
Right. They're not measured on being helpful.
Right.
Right. So we need to put some more science around that, I think. We got to
We
do
do.
research together. And
Yeah, and it's, you know, to be honest, I think that's one of the hard rocks to move from.
Yeah.
It is the incentives and how we look at that. But I was having this conversation with somebody the other day. Just think about the difference between, if you walk into a high-end department store where the people are not on commission versus the department store where they are on commission.
Oh, gosh.
It's a very different experience.
100%.
And we're always in B2B, the one where the reps are on commission.
Yeah.
And that is
It's
not
not a
the
good
experience. Yeah, it's
That's not a good experience.
Yeah, your first
The
reaction.
X in ABX is not.
Yeah, that's not
delivered.
Yeah, it's a bad X. It's a small X. Yeah.
So there you go. So I guess as we wrap up, I just want to invite, I guess, the delegates and everybody's joined us here today. We do have this research that's been put out. We have the UK and Ireland research, but there's also global research that supports it. This is just a wrap-up slide that is from the actual research report itself, where we have a point of view on it. And there it is. So please, there's a QR code if you're interested. Download it. And I guess now we're happy to.
Yeah, and let me do a little promo here,
Yeah.
because I think there may be a bunch of people who already looked at the research.
Right.
They've already seen the research. If you haven't looked at this report, then you should, because this report is, yes, it presents the research numbers, but a lot of the what to do about it and putting it into context, which I don't do in our reports.
You give us the problem.
We lay out the problem. We tell you there's a problem. Right. So it's really worthwhile. It's really well done.
Oh, thank you.
And so I think everybody ought to check out that report, even if you're not in UKI. It's worth checking out.
Perfect. So how do I?
We have
Stop sharing. Any questions?
3 questions.
All right.
Can you see, is there a little question mark top right? That's a question mark.
Yeah,
So we're gonna take questions now.
but I don't see anything in it.
It's blank.
Oh.
You wanna read off?
Yeah, why don't you read it?
Yeah, I can read off the question.
Ladies and gentlemen, Gifford.
Okay, question 1, which looks like it's going to be Kerry, but both comment.
Yeah.
Given
Well,
that
most of them always go to you. I think. The data.
Given that buyers are engaging vendors earlier, but are actually using LLMs more in the middle of the journey, what does this suggest about the kind of information or clarity buyers still feel they can't get on their own?
Oh, I love this question. Yes, I have a lot to say about this. So right now, another research project we're doing is we're looking at B2B vendor websites and rating them according to how much of the content on the homepage is self-promotion versus how much is aimed at a buyer on what they need. And it's about 65 or so % self-promotion in most cases. That is not what your buyers need. Again, they're experienced people, unless you're in a brand new category. If you're a brand new category, okay. But well, if you're in a brand new category and you're doing self-promotion, that's just dumb, because you don't probably have competitors, and your buyers need to know what you do for for them and how to solve problems. But if you're in an existing category, you have experienced buyers. They already know whether you're the best or the biggest or whatever. They're not you're not going to convince them. And mostly what they're going to do is scoop by that and try to find something that's of interest. And they're going to find it difficult to find something that's of interest. And so to me, what it looks very much like is that when buyers are in market, they're still coming to your website, they're digging through, they have to do due diligence to do that. But if they're not in market, they're not coming to your website because it doesn't serve their needs. They're not interested in self-promotion when they're not in market. They want to know what's the latest thing in how to solve these problems, or what are people doing. And if they come to your website and they're looking for that, they're probably not finding it. Right? So why come to your website? So when they're not in market, they're not coming to your website. They're going to ChatGPT or Claude or whatever. They're finding out
the latest thing.
Yeah, sort through all of that stuff and see if there's anything interesting and tell me what it is. That's what's happening there. So I think we need to do a much better job of delivering content through our websites that is of interest to the people who are actually our buyers, who are probably.
But doesn't that then boomerang back from the LLM through the referral links? And that's the,
well,
you start getting that.
It can.
If you want to fact check it, whether it's Google, Gemini does this now really well.
Yeah.
Perplexity does it. There's certain engines that really do it well with link back to the content, so that you can actually go back to the source material.
Yes, and so you want to be that source material. So one of the interesting things is I've heard a number of people say, if you want your website to be LLM friendly, you have to structure things like FAQs and answer questions that buyers have. And I just think to myself, well, why wouldn't you be doing that anyway? Right. If buyers have to go to the LLM to get a straightforward answer about what you do,
that's not
great.
That's
not ideal. So they should get a straightforward answer about what you do from your website. So I think the way I think about this is, you're not losing web traffic to LLMs. You're losing it to irrelevance and boredom on the part of your buyers, who just aren't getting anything that they need.
There you have it. What's next, Victor?
This one's definitely more for Enrico.
Okay.
When organizations adopt a signal-led outbound approach, what's typically the first measurable result they notice?
What's the first measurable result? The first measurable result is that they can is engagement rates, right? That you get from whether it's the display. I talked a bit about the inbound motion and the outbound motion. You're fundamentally targeting better buying groups, right, with content. So you're going to get a better engagement rate. Now that engagement rate, if it's more top of funnel kind of display, is going to be driving traffic to like I mentioned, the content hub. But eventually that's going to, as long as you can follow it all along, the attribution will go back to a better cohort of accounts that converted through that inbound motion. Outbound's the same thing, right? It's signal-led segmentation fundamentally changes the outcome of any program, whether it's inbound or outbound.
Yeah, we talked about this yesterday at the breakfast. So we showed earlier the chart of the buying journey, 60% not in market, the rest somewhere in market. If you're doing outbound to the 60%, which you may do, so if they're your strategic accounts, top 20 accounts in the world, or top 10 accounts in each territory, your AE's got to be there all the time. That's their job, right? You're going to be doing outbound into those accounts. But we have to gauge our expectations accordingly. If they're not in market, use 6sense and you can see that they are not in market. You're going outbound there. What you're doing is you're doing a long-term seeding preference and demand in those accounts, and it's going to take a while.
So what this speaks to is actually an improvement in alignment, right? We talked about sales and marketing alignment, right? And as long as you as a team can get together in a room and say, okay, this is what's going to happen, and then you prove it out. It actually did happen. Yeah. Right. We're not going to get these set of accounts. We're going to go into them for a very specific reason, and it's not to book meetings. Right. It's back to build that mosaic, understand them better, build preference, right? So when they do go into a buying cycle, guess what? We're on the day one shortlist.
That's right. And then if you see that you've got accounts in your territory where they're later in the buying journey, they're probably setting their preferences now. You're going outbound into there, and sometime over the next week or couple of weeks or month or so, you expect, hopefully, you're going to be getting an invitation to have a meeting.
Well, exactly.
Right? And that may look to you like they're responding to your phone call, but really what's happening is you called at a time when they're about to call you, right? But being there is good.
Yeah,
That's
but
what
that's
you should
okay.
be doing. Yeah,
That's okay.
exactly
Right.
right. Yeah.
And again, it drives the numbers better. It provides a better experience for the buyer, right? Back to the ABX.
Yep.
Like
if I'm a sales leader and I know that, all right, so here's 100 accounts, 60 of them are not in market. I want my AE in those 60 accounts, mapping those accounts and doing outbound. I don't expect meetings from them. If I see that I've got 17 accounts on average in the consideration stage, really getting close to where we're going to get meetings, I expect over the next couple of months from that same rep, I'm going to get meetings from those accounts. And I'm going to hold them accountable for doing that from those accounts, but not from these other 60, because that's not what they're just.
It drives account planning, incentives, it SLAs between sales and marketing.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of things that come from this. So.
Well, you really answered both of the two final questions there. So
okay. Maybe
we'll take the rest of the day off.
Take the rest of the day. Listen, maybe let me just thank you again, Kerry. It's been a pleasure working with you on
this
research.
This has been a blast. You guys did a wonderful job.
And you've done well with all the jet lag.
Thank you.
I'm impressed.
I did it.
All right, thanks for joining us.
I pressed the wrong button earlier.
Well, that's okay. That's the jet lag. All right then. Thanks everybody for joining us.
Thank you.